You all know about Chandana, we don't have to introduce about him. So he's a good friend to us, and he's a very good Dhamma teacher. He didn't very good. People are talking a lot of things about you, and I'm very happy to see you coming to our place and helping to. Because Chandana start his Buddhist education, I believe, from this place. 1994 with my teacher, late Venerable Dr. Ratanasara. He's my teacher, my uncle, and his teacher was his teacher also. So I'm very happy to see Chandana again here with us all the time, doing so many things. So you're great, Chandana.
That's a mighty intro you have. Well, you can only try to remember the things that your own teachers have inspired you by and with, and emulating in that sense is one of the best things you could do, given the fact that when I started my journey, as Bhante said, my intrepid steps towards the house across the street from here where College of Buddhist Studies was, it changed my life, once I made that decision to come in. And I was a bag of confused questions, trying to find the meaning of everything. And it's been it is a remarkable ride. And that's what the Dhamma does. It's life-changing. It's wonderful. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And the ultimate sense of security. There is, the refuge we take is, there's a reason why we take the refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. It's not outside entities from the outside of our realm of experience. They're not. They're very much our lives, how we see life, how we see our experiences, and how we see our own mind. Yes, the Buddha lived 2,600 years ago, approximately, as a human being, but he saw through the defilements, he saw through the mind and the workings, the subtle workings of the mind, and how he developed the steps that enabled him to attain Nibbana. He saw clearly the 12 links of causal relations. He saw clearly the Four Noble Truths. He no longer was just a mere human. He was, but that's to us, that's even more important, because we do not necessarily have to look at the Buddha from 2,600 years ago as this human being that we are taking refuge in. It is our own potential of reaching that state. The step-by-step manual, guide, is the Dhamma, which is the other factor of the refuge. And then the Sangha is the community of individuals who are practicing it, namely the monks and nuns and the laity who are practicing religion. I started off talking about something equally important, thanks to Bhante's prelude, but today's topic, the weeks prior to my talk, I always think about, okay, what should I be talking about? What would benefit us? And all of us. Something that is relatable, something that is helpful. So I was thinking about acceptance. And it's a wonderful topic. It encapsulates so many different factors. And then I was thinking about happiness. And then today, as I was driving from, on the freeway, and the 110 freeway was pretty jammed packed. and you would see how the defilements were in action in front of you. How people were so anxious, how people were so angry, how people were so attached to the idea of getting 2 inches in front of the other car, with or without signaling, trying to find surface streets to get out of the way, to outsmart everyone. And then you had those who were completely absent-mindedly just stop and go, bumper to bumper. And so I guess it will be a talk regarding happiness as well as dealing with difficult situations and difficult people. How many of us actually have encountered or do encounter difficult people in our daily life? Well, it's a marvelous gift. It's like the hindrances. Not at the time that you're exposed to them necessarily. Because when you're exposed to these situations and difficult people, whether it's a boss, it's a fellow employee, a colleague, a friend, a parent, neighbor, close enough, we always like to externalize the experience. The externalization, or try to put that person into a situation where it makes us the us and them the them. Us and them relationship occurs. Where we can easily vilify, demonize, and put them outside of our sphere of possibly even getting any semblance of forgiveness, any semblance of love. So that's what I was doing on the freeway. As I was stuck bumper to bumper, I was just like zapping the lanes with metta. It's interesting because I was not expecting to be here at this time because it was so blocked off, the freeway. And lo and behold, the drivers slowly started moving their cars and we're here. The metta that we practice is very much real. It can bear its fruits rather instantaneously, give its outcome quickly. However, before we practice the metta, there are a few steps prior to that. Some people say, well, in order for you to practice loving kindness, you need to jump in first with the forgiveness meditation. That's wonderful, that's true. However, whether you're starting with forgiveness, dry forgiveness, and then trying to move up to metta, loving kindness, wishing kind thoughts upon this person who's the difficult person, or the situation to try to change it, oftentimes there is this ghostly character behind these intentions, these lofty intentions. And they're typically the defilements. One, I really want to get this situation changed to the one that I am desiring it to be. Meaning, I would like this situation to occur instead of this. So we are trying to force metta, loving kindness, into the situation, or into the person, or in the interaction between ourselves and this other person, or persons. And by that token, you also are trying to get rid of this situation, which is the other defilement, which is dosa, or hatred, or aversion. So, there's been many instances throughout the Nikayas. One of my favorite books comes from the Kuddaka Nikaya, which are the shorter sayings, which is basically the biggest Nikaya, because it encapsulates Dhammapada, which is, by the way, this one is from the late Venerable Kesri Dhammananda, who was the chief abbot of the great Theravada temple in Malaysia. And he has has many books, and Khuddaka Nikaya also includes Theravada, which is the sayings of the elders, and Theravada, which is the saying of the bhikkhunis, elders, among other things, as well as the Jataka stories, among others. But I found this one to be quite interesting and relevant to our talk today, which comes from Dhammapada number 223. And it's under the title, Overcoming Anger by Love. Conquer anger by love, evil by good. Conquer the miser with liberality or generosity, and the liar with truth. The cool thing about this book is because it does give us a commentary as to what ensued, what happened prior to the Buddha saying those few lines. And I'd like to read that to us briefly. Metta protects Lady Uttara from boiling oil. Uttara was the daughter of a farm laborer named Punna, who worked for a rich man named Sumana. One day, Punna and his wife offered alms food to Venerable Sariputta soon after his arising from sustained mental absorption, Nirodha Samapatti, which basically is a cessation of feeling and perception and consciousness, a very, very sublime state to be in. And as a result of that good deed, they became very rich. There is, the Buddha and his students would always say that whenever, including one of my teachers, Bhante Vimaramsi, he says, when you find a person who is of that caliber, who is sitting in meditation, and they usually sit in that state for about 3 days to 7 days, but no more than 7 days. So when they come out, they have not eaten anything. They were in full absorption for approximately that duration, 3 or 7 days. Give something to them. Be generous, even if it's a tiny little morsel of food or a cup of water. Because it delivers such great boons, and the karmic vipakas, or the benefit of that, is tremendous. So that has what taken place here with this couple becoming quite rich in this story. Panna found gold in the field he was plowing, and the king officially declared him the royal banker. On one occasion, Punna offered alms food to the Buddha and the bhikkhus for 7 days, and on the 7th day, after hearing the Buddha's discourse, all the 3 members of the family realized the Dhamma. When they say realize the Dhamma, they have at least seen the first stage of enlightenment, meaning they became sotapannas, meaning stream enterers. There's 4 stages. The first one is stream entry, second one is once returner, third is arahant, or anagami, meaning a non-returner, and the 4th one is the arahant. So there are so many benefits in even achieving or attaining the first level, meaning the person does not fall back in being reborn as a hell being, as an animal, as a hungry ghost. And at the most, they have 7 lives to live out as a human, including this one. So it's a good thing. So, when the Buddha was asked constantly, what is it that you want the least from us? This was, I believe, either from a lay person or a bhikkhu. And he said, the least that is expected from you is to attain sotapanna, which is stream enterer, getting a glimpse of nibbana in passing. Just like you would be driving up a mountain road, and then you see, on your turn, you see this beautiful peak of a mountain, snow peak. And then just you turn on your way, meandering your way up, and no longer is the mountain visible. But you saw it. You saw it. and nobody can tell you that you haven't seen it. That's one of the similes that is offered in the Nikayas. So later Punna married Uttara off to the son of the rich man Sumana. Uttara was unhappy in her husband's home because she could not offer alms food to the Buddha or listen to the Dhamma. So she told her father, "Why have you put me in this cage? Here I cannot see any bhikkhus and I have no opportunity to perform any meritorious deed." Her father felt sorry for her and sent her a large sum of money. And with the permission of her husband, Uttara engaged a lady named Sirima to look to the needs of her husband for a number of days. In that culture, it was possible for a person, if they chose to, because she no longer was able to fulfill her responsibilities as a spouse, as a partner. So she wanted to hire someone that would be able to do those things in that household. In that culture, this was quite permissible at that time. During that time, Uttara offered alms food to the Buddha and the bhikkhus. On the 15th day, her husband smiled when he saw her busy preparing food in the kitchen. He commented, "How foolish she is. She does not know how to enjoy herself. She is tiring herself out with this alms food ceremony." Sirima saw him smile and, forgetting that she was only a paid woman, felt very jealous of Uttara. This is Sirima. This is the hired individual bearing the responsibility of the wife or the spouse in this household. Became jealous of Uttara. Being unable to control herself, Sirima went into the kitchen and got some boiling oil with the intention of pouring it over the head of Uttara. The lady saw Sirima coming but bore no ill will. She reflected that because Sirima had stood in for her, she had been able to listen to the Dhamma, fulfill her religious duties, and perform other acts of charity. Thus, she was quite thankful and grateful to Sirima, the other woman. Suddenly, she realized that Sirima was going to pour boiling oil over her. So she made this firm resolution: "If I bear any ill will towards Sirima, may this boiling oil scald me. If I have no ill will towards her, may it not scald me." As Uttara had no ill will towards Sirima, the boiling oil proved as harmless as if it was just like cold water. Then Sirima thought the oil must have gone cold and went to get another pot of boiling oil. The attendants of Uttara caught her and beat her. Uttara stopped her attendants and instructed them to rub Sirima with medicinal ointment. Then Sirima remembered her true position, and she regretted that she had done wrong to Uttara and asked her mistress to forgive her. Uttara then told her, "I have my father. I shall ask him whether I should accept your apology." Sirima agreed to go and apologize to Punna, but Uttara explained, "When I said my father, I did not refer to the father who had brought me into this round of rebirth. I was referring to my father, Buddha, who has helped me break the chain of rebirths, who has taught me the Dhamma, the noble truths." Sirima then expressed her wish to see the Buddha. So it was arranged that Sirima would offer alms food to the Buddha and the bhikkhus on the following day at the house of Uttara. After the meal, the Buddha was told about what had happened between Sirima and Uttara. Sirima admitted her mistakes and begged the Buddha to advise Uttara to forgive her. He then asked Uttara how she felt when Sirima poured boiling oil on her head. And Uttara answered, "Venerable Sir, because I am grateful to Sirima, I bear no hatred or ill will towards her. I only radiate my loving kindness towards her." The Buddha then applauded her. Well done, Uttara. By not bearing any ill will, you have been able to conquer one who abuses you By being generous, you should conquer one who is stingy. By speaking the truth, you should conquer one who tells lies. On the advice of the Buddha, Uttara forgave Sirima. Throughout our lives, we live with our eyes closed, following our natural reactionary instincts. As you pointed out, many of us, we have difficult situations, difficult people in our lives. Often they push us over the edge. And we are human. We have feelings, we have thoughts, we have our individuality, which we feel are being perpetrated, taken advantage of. How can we apply some of these principles that we have accepted in this tradition? How can we apply the Four Noble Truths? For example, when you are encountering this difficult situation or this difficult individual in your life, which is so raw, it's right there in front of you, and they are exposing you to that difficult situation. There is suffering. There is pain. There is dissatisfaction. You want to pull yourself out of that situation. First Noble Truth. It's there. Buddhism is not talking about principles that are in a book that we can go and study like in a college or university, or some nice little self-help book that we read, put it away, forget about it. It's all about your own life. That's what the three refuges are all about, your own life. You know, when the Buddha was asked about what the purpose of meditation was, he said there's several. I'm just going to enumerate a few of them, which is, first one is happiness. Another one is not to be confused when these situations occur in your life. Another one is to get rid of pain and grief in your life. The other one is to develop right view, the right attitude. The big one is developing insight and wisdom to see through all these phases and layers of our experience and to break free. You know, there's a story I've read of this in the subway, New York System subway. And it's late afternoon, and one of the carts, I guess, the doors open, and this man who seems to be a father to these three kids that are running around go into this wagon or a cart, whatever you call it, and they get a seat and they sit down. You know, it's people are trying to get home. They've worked 9 to 5 shifts. They're exhausted. You have all kinds of people in the carriage, and the kids are very rowdy. Yelling, jumping around, messing other people's newspapers as they're trying to concentrate to read something, to get their minds off of things. So after this goes on for about 10-15 minutes, meanwhile the other passengers are just fuming with anger as to how is this man so insensitive as to not see how rowdy, disorganized, and undisciplined his kids are. Somebody has to say something. Meanwhile, the man is sitting there just phased out. He's just looking at a point. He's not even seeing his own children that are coming and pulling on him, etc. Suddenly, he wakes up. And he turns to the people around him and he says, "I'm so sorry, I'm terribly sorry. We just came back from the hospital. My wife died. Their children, our children. My wife died." Everybody's attitude shifted completely. Now they had such compassion, such regret, such remorse, such pain towards these total strangers that they were so adamantly, passionately desirous of kicking them out while the train was moving. What happened there? The changing of facts. Data was introduced, information was introduced that was not available, that was not even conceivable in those heated moments of passion. In this case, anger, hatred. So in those moments that we encounter these difficult individuals in our lives, now I'm not saying they're always coming from a very good place, or where they've had a tremendously difficult set of circumstances dictate their behavior towards you to be so harsh, so insensitive, so inconsiderate. However, there are ways that we can curb that, because ultimately the world that is happening is not outside of ourselves. The hatred that is happening in our mind. The tension that is created in your mind when you see yourself caught in a traffic and you have to be somewhere. Relaxing that tension in your mind. Looking at it, releasing it, smiling about the whole thing, how silly it is. Oftentimes, we are unable to see through our own emotions. You know, they are resources of tremendous energy that can boost us up to higher states of being. And one of the things that the Buddha said about why we meditate was happiness. And the ultimate form of happiness is the tranquility of mind, which with practice can become unassailable. That is your refuge, right there. That is where you find the triple gem. From there, whenever you open your mouth, you cannot be breaking the precepts. You cannot wish harm upon another person or tell untruth to someone. Because ultimately, we are seeking a type of a lifestyle that gives us a life that is remorseless. We don't have this regret towards our own actions that we just did as to negative actions. So can we do that? Can we apply ourselves? And that's one of the reasons why we take the 5 precepts. That's one of the reasons why we sit and meditate. You know, I always ask students and friends and people, why do we meditate even? Oftentimes they want to not answer that question because they realize it's such a foolish reason. For most of us, it's because it's the in thing, like doing yoga or something like that. Now, I'm a yoga instructor too. I can vouch for the benefits of yoga. I've been teaching it for many years. Meditation, incredible life changer. However, we need to understand as to why we are sitting to meditate. Why we are here even. What compels us to just take a moment to just look at ourselves and just say, how could I have had a different response and not a reaction? Because response requires us to pause a moment, to think it over. And then from a space of serenity, hopefully, to come out and have a proper response. You know, there's a saying that my mom, before she passed away, she would tell us. It's a saying in Armenian. It's I'm going to translate, but I don't know if it will come out the same way. But the essence of it is this: the sweet tongue, the sweet words, basically, have the power to pull out the most venomous snake out of its den, out of its cave, out of its home. Basically, what it's trying to say is, with the tactful, wise, and skillful use of proper behavior. And here I'm going back to the Eightfold Path. Harmonious communication, or right speech, harmonious action, right effort, etc. When we apply that in our behavior, in our interactions with others, we have the ability to curb the intense moments, because ultimately we only have control over our own emotions and how we behave or react. One time when I was working at a special ed school where we used to work with children and adolescents who were really on the outer rim of society as far as not having had any proper upbringing, and they were like being moved, tossed around from foster home to foster home, and they had served time in jail and juvenile hall, etc. So we're talking about human beings that were tremendously scarred, children too. There was one particular student who was extremely defiant, beyond defiant. I mean, the way he would greet was, he would use cuss words instead of good mornings every time he walked into my class. But it took me a year and a half to get him to smile and to tell me thank you. To him to smile and to tell me thank you. It took patience, so we need to develop that level of tolerance that really is totally up to us. No one can enforce it upon us other than the situations and our openness and acceptance of the situation as it is. Now, this young man used to throw chairs at me, sharp pencils at me. He would, one time I remember, he even grabbed hold of a thick, hardbound math textbook and hit his classmate, who was not even looking at him. Tortured individuals. This person, a year and a half later, was able to turn around. So as teachers, as colleagues, we were trying so hard to shower this person as well as the rest of the class, to curb those tendencies that they are used to, in fact, so accustomed to. You've known each other for X amount of years. You know how you react. But you know how you feel afterwards, after your reaction's heat is gone. How about we shift things around a little bit and put a little bit more effort in looking at our mind while it is in that state of incredible, tumultuous, boiling, bubbling state of anger or desire. Just looking at it. Just that looking itself is the essence of vipassana, which is the real seeing. That's where wisdom comes in. Wisdom is you. It comes out of your life. And it's never boring. Life is always going to throw things at you that were totally unexpected. You know that. I know that. So how many times can we, how often can we remind ourselves, even if it's once a week that you stop by and you look at your mind as let's say, you know, I could have handled that situation a little bit better. If only that situation or similar ones could arise again. Guess what? It does. So, Bhante, how long was the time?
Almost finished.
Okay.
Stop and
Yeah. Are there any questions? Yes?
Yeah, one thing which, thank you for your enlightening talk. You know, as a citizen here, you know, sounds a little far-fetched, but when I watch the elections, you know, the things for the primaries, and you see all the, you know, hatred and kind of very low type of, you know, belittling of one group or another. And then as a citizen, you're supposed to be kind of dispassionate and try to make some choices. But you know, you really feel, I feel very disturbed, like I don't want to forgive any of them. And I don't really feel any, you know, I just feel very unsympathetic, but yet as a citizen, you have to do your duty and should basically, you know, figure out how to make some sort of choice. But given the, hearing all the way they speak, just the words themselves, I mean, not to say what's factually true, it just, it's a really so disturbing that I feel like I'm kind of stuck, no way to, you know, I would like to make a difference, but I'm not sure how to even analyze something like that, you know, from a Buddhist perspective, you know. Should I just go past their words and like don't vote at all, or try to stay neutral? But their rhetoric is so inflammatory that, you know, you just feel, I just was wondering how you would, you know, on that kind of level, how you would solve this.
Well, you're taking the first step. That's what I would offer, first of all. You're taking the first step by opening up and verbalizing what you've been perplexed by, thinking about all this time, since these derogatory statements and hurtful statements on all sides, in a sense, pretty much, maybe except for one. But what I would say, I mean, it's always important to look at a person's behavior and words. Some of these people that you mentioned, they have lived in the spotlight for quite some time, so you do have the ability to look at their lives over the years, over the decades. So you have the ability. All you have to do is research. So unfortunately, majority of the population, majority of citizens, they do not want to put that effort. They just want to go by and buy what they're being presented by, you know, with. It's just like we want to be convinced to go and buy KFC. We want to be convinced to go and purchase this cell phone, this iPhone. We want to go ahead and purchase or accept the words of this person because of that 30-second slot that they had spent $30 million to make a nice commercial, hiring some top-notch directors. However, that even when you go and vote for these individuals, you are taking responsibility of the actions that these people will commit in the future.
Yeah.
It's inescapable because you are sharing in the karmic effects simply because you have voted as well for them. So what I would do is I would look at their past history, and definitely I would look at their words, what they are saying. You know, there's a saying that the fruit does not fall too far from the tree. So you're not going to find a pear fallen from a tree that happens to be an apple tree. I'm sorry. You know, it's common sense. So, but ultimately I would always return back to myself and understand as to what motives I have in wanting to choose this person over that. Am I coming from a biased position? Because there's a lot of bias going on, as you know. Oh, I'll vote for this person, I'll like this person because of who he or she is. Well, good luck.
But if you don't vote at all, then does that mean you're not responsible for their, you know, karma?
That's a valid point. I'm not saying don't vote at all either.
Yeah.
I'm just presenting you with possible scenarios, but your intentions are very important.
Okay.
And our homework has to be done. No one can do the work for us. However, if every single citizen actually does their due diligence and researches, and not be mesmerized by the words or what these people look like in front of the camera, and see what they really are behind the scenes through their previous actions, I think a better state of affairs could be brought forth.
Okay, thank you. a teacher's really. It's like a teacher's approach. Do your homework.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, yeah, I don't know, it's, in life that has served a lot for all of us, I believe. Are there any other questions? Yeah? Yes, I can
Yeah.
see. That's it, please.
Well, you talk about the tranquility of happiness in today's talk. What do you think of the difference between pleasure and happiness? Because I do feel like in our daily life, a lot of people say, or sometimes including ourselves, say like, I want a happiness. But sometimes like what we are looking for is just pleasure. It's not the real happiness, or at least the Buddha wants us to pursue.
According to Buddhism, especially this tradition, Theravada, when you look at the teachings, when we look at happiness, there is some level of happiness, obviously. For example, if I didn't have legs, it would be painful right now. If I didn't have, my senses, I would not be able to enjoy certain aspects of life. I won't be able to see a beautiful flower, or see a blue sky, or hear the sounds of the first raindrops in the beginning of fall, for example, or winter. So there are some, enjoyable moments. However, there are gradations of it, because soon enough, if you have, let's say you get into a beautiful, comfortable couch and you sit in there, the most expensive sofa in the world, made with silk, I don't know, whatever, and you sit there and you're like, this is incredible. Guess what? If you are told to sit there for 3 days, that will become extremely painful. So what the teachings are offering for us is the ability to look at pleasure and painful situations to be no different from each other in the long run, because they fall under the umbrella of dukkha, or suffering, or dissatisfaction. In Buddhism, there's 3 types of feeling. There's pleasant feeling, there's unpleasant or painful feeling, and there's neutral feeling. When we practice deeper states of meditation, we get to see both, but ultimately we get to the third one, which is found in the states of absorption, or jhanas, where it's such a lofty state of being that you have this state of tranquility, which comes through the experience of equanimity. Equanimity is upekkha in Pali. And what that is the state that I was referring to earlier as to the tranquility of mind. To be, if there is a feeling that really is worth writing home about, really enjoyable, really good because it's clear, it allows you to see the different facets of your living experience, equanimity is the closest, because it allows your mind to be tranquil under all kinds of circumstances. Because ultimately seeking, we're living in a world where one of my teachers, Bhante Punnaji, and he mentions this often, he states how life has become a constant pursuit of the pleasurable, while at the same time minimizing the unpleasant. Meanwhile, we are running like in a rat race in the wheel, like you've seen them in movies and things like that. We're constantly running and we're in place until one day we look at ourselves and we're all wrinkled up, gray hair, decrepit, unable to walk, getting sick. Oops, I'm about to die, or I have cancer. Meanwhile, all my life I was spending it running after pleasure, while at the same time minimizing pain. What the Buddha was on, these ideologies were there. These are called, one of them actually that the Buddha used was, for this, was this philosophy school that also sought always was under or after seeking the most pleasure out of life, as much as you can. There was a philosophy school in India that followed this hedonistic approach. The Buddha was saying, you have to transcend that, because your purpose here is to minimize suffering and cut yourself from ever returning back into the wheel of samsara, of rebirth, because we are lucky to be born as human beings. The chances are so slim for us to be reborn as human beings. Every time you look at yourself in the mirror, please kindly remind yourself that this is such a huge blessing for you to be reborn as a human being. It's rare. It's truly rare, and to come across the Dhamma is even more rare. So, to pursue pleasure just for the sake of pursuing that will leave us disappointed at the end of our lives, and that's what the Buddha was trying to teach. So the ultimate purpose then becomes the fact that we need to seek wisdom and insight to break through samsara. So that's the Buddhist approach in reference to, but we can actually talk afterwards if you like. Thank you. Yes?
Thank you, Chandana.